Welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Inside Track. We've got a great guest with us again today, Simon Parish. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Ryan. How are you?
Yes, I'm awesome as always. Now, this is second visit for you, so you catch up Rob Handy on his three. So welcome back. Now, obviously, we had you on the last series, Simon. So we won't go through in terms of who you do, but do you want to give a quick update in terms of who you're working for now, who Tima is?
Sure, absolutely. So Simon Parish, I'm the head of sales and operations at Tima. Work with a couple of, I'm one of three owners of the business. The other two do lots of other things, including gym ownership. But Tima's gone through quite a transformation in the last 6 months. So I can't quite remember when we last spoke, but a lot has happened since then in terms of new clients, new products, new challenges, and it's been a bit of a whirlwind actually.
No, absolutely. Now, I think the one big thing that you guys are doing, obviously, you guys work with Anytime Fitness quite a lot because that's sort of how you guys transcended to where you are now. But obviously, I think you guys, it's right in saying you guys got the biggest pre-sale in the world ever is it Brixton?
Yeah, correct. So just to caveat it slightly, according to the master franchisors in the US, someone in America has done better than Brixton did. They've not been too forthcoming about who though, so that I won't say anymore, but it's officially the best non-US pre-sale ever, and I suspect it may be the best ever, but officially the best outside of the US.
Well, they're obviously trying to keep it closer to hand, being an American brand, so we can't blame them too much. But
no,
I mean that's brilliant for you guys in the sense of you guys have gone in there, opened this club, opened with a substantial amount of members. Do you want to just run through quickly the sort of things that you guys were doing with them?
Yeah, of course. So we have dabbled in pre-sales before, and obviously myself and my business partners have a lot of experience in opening clubs. That was my past life, as it were. But this was an existing client who had a couple of sites of us already, and he was looking to open this club in Brixton, and engaged with us very, very early to ensure we were part of the planning in the early stages, and that every development was consulted on, etc. And it just meant we were a lot closer to this particular project than sometimes we are. Most of the pre-sales we've done in the past, we've been more of a sort of a last minute, let's try this and see if it works, as opposed to with Brixton, we were involved from the start, as it were. And we actually developed a strategy that I won't reveal on air, but we did develop a new strategy that seemed to be very, very effective. I'll talk around it a little bit. It's basically looking at how you can get a better conversion rate. Because traditionally the trick in pre-sales is to just get an absolute mountain of prospects that compensate for a relatively low conversion rate because of course you don't have the product to show. You rely on discounting, etc. But we developed a method that allowed us to make a more concentrated effort, shall I say, and that led to an overall higher conversion rate. And look, it wasn't just us. As I say, the franchisee, very experienced, very capable, all the best suppliers involved, and everyone working together to deliver an outstanding result. So we're very, very proud of it. And it is a methodology that we've repeated since then. And again, it's not, we're not going to set the world record every time, but it does appear to be a substantial improvement on the old model. So we're really happy with it and hoping to do it. Well, we have done it 4 times since, and then we've got a couple more in the pipeline as well. It's
interesting, isn't it, bringing you guys from a sales perspective, call perspective, so early on in pre-sale, because it's having done up 50, 60 pre-sales now. Quite often what happens is obviously you do all your marketing, you get all the leads in, and it tends to be email, text campaigns and automations, and a lot of that works early doors. And then the telephone calls tend to come in further down the line. So it's an interesting tactic to bring you guys in earlier in the process to really hit those calls and keep those leads live.
Yeah, well, I don't want to say too much about the strategy on there, but part of it is identifying where to focus your resource and where you're going to get the best return. The problem with emails and text is that it's blanket, it's generic. It's look, you can be targeted in terms of this prospect came from Facebook, so we'll send them this message. This prospect came from Instagram, so we'll send them this message. But it's a very the Tima service allows you to get a lot closer to the detail.
Absolutely.
And it also means I call it a temperature check. So I will say this: one of the things that we offer to our pre-sale clients is a temperature check on the prospect pool. So we will take a representative sample, call them all up, not to sell them anything, but just to understand what their fitness goals are, what their backgrounds are they a member of a gym currently, etc. And what's caused them to be interested in this new club, what's attracted them to it, have they heard of, in this case, Anytime Fitness before, etc. And again, it just allows you to shape a strategy around higher level insights. And of course, it's an additional communication channel. So yeah, it's something that I've been a little bit afraid of previously, just because it wasn't a concept that we'd proven before. But Brixton was such a unique opportunity because it was an existing client. It's someone that I know, trust and respect, and we were able to really collaborate and brainstorm. And I felt I was in a position to say, no, you can't do that, you don't do that. And equally, they felt able to say to me that that's a waste of time. And it was a real, I'll be able to talk about it a little bit more in a few shows time. Hopefully, it was a really interesting project, and we did take a few chances by doing things a bit differently, but it paid off dividends. So it's a really good case study for us. And of course, we're still working with the club. Job's not quite done yet, but just an absolutely fantastic start. So
how many members is that roughly?
Just over 2,100.
Wow, what a way to start. When a general, I mean, usually in Anytime Fitness is about 1,000 members, isn't it? 1,000, 1,200 for that break-even point. So that's a, I mean, he's laughing from the outset, isn't he? Profitability, money in the bank. Happy days, move on to the next project. So, well done to you guys. Now, the main reason to get you on, because I think you're in a unique position in terms of where your career has gone in terms of setting up individual clubs and work in the variety of clubs you work with, but also setting up Tima. So I think it was a really, really good opportunity to get you on in terms of talking about how to expand your business, or how to grow and take it to the next level. So I know that's something you're keen and a real big fan of.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been on my mind a lot over the last 6 months, because as I alluded to earlier, we've just seen quite rapid growth in Tima. And look, it comes with a whole series of challenges. And having gone from a single site operator to a multi-site operator, specifically in the gym sector as well, I thought I might share some thoughts, some learnings, because I'm sure there are plenty of listeners who, maybe they have a small business, they want to grow into a medium business. I certainly wouldn't say I'm best placed to advise on medium to large, but small to medium. I've done a couple of times now, and there are some similar challenges throughout. So I was quite keen to talk about it. And it's a conversation I'm having with a lot of our clients at the moment, because, selfishly, I want them to open more sites. I want them to grow their businesses. So, and it's, there's definitely, I think, a similar set of challenges across the board. But I know that with the gyms, one of the biggest things for us was that going from a single site to multiple site meant that we couldn't be quite as close to the action as we had been, or certainly I couldn't be quite as close to the action as I had been, and finding ways to develop an infrastructure that ensures you continue your values, continue your productivity, and just ensure that you place yourself for growth. And of course, once you start thinking about growth, you think about scalability. Is this scalable? Is it not scalable? How valuable is it? So it was something I was quite keen to talk about on the show today.
And what were the main things, Simon, in terms of, so obviously you're working at the one site, suddenly you've got 1, 2 extras. Now, obviously not being as close to it, the challenges there are in itself. How do we manage those individual staff? How do we manage the processes? So how did you guys go about it and go, okay, this is what we need to do to make sure we're getting the same out of all 3 clubs?
Yeah, so I think that we made the first, so we went from 1 club to 6 over 7 years. Right. 7 over 7 years. It's now 6 months since it's been sold. But and I think initially our plan was to run each site as an independent business, because we felt like that had been kind of our secret sauce on the first club. The fact that we were, an obvious example is that we were extremely receptive to member feedback, because the member would speak directly to the decision maker in that circumstance. So it was easier to be really responsive, really on the pulse, and really understand the business. So we took the view that we wanted each club to operate in a similar vein. But of course, it's just very, very difficult to do that when you're across multiple sites. So look, we had the advantage of being part of a franchise. So, a number of the things were, the same anyway, same model, same aesthetic, same brand standards, same suppliers, that sort of thing. So that was very much in our favor. But I guess, it really is about the infrastructure you have in place. And, I'm saying this in self-interest, but I mean it genuinely. Looking to support externally can be very, very useful. So an example of this is we outsourced our operations management in terms of, rather than having individual club managers having their own checklist, their own process, their own procedures, all the rest of it, we worked with an operator to uniform that, create a digital solution, and roll it out across all six sites, and then have that as a common ground. But we went externally for that. That wasn't something we developed ourselves, and it was externally managed as well. So we obviously used it every day, but if we ever had an issue with it, we'd phone up Atlas Citation. It's an extremely useful tool. And even things like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but even things like our marketing assets, we started going to the same marketing agency for all the sites. The marketing planner would be the same. We'd allow the club managers to put their own individual flair on it and make it unique to their demographic and their membership base and their community. But it had the same skeleton, if you like, had the same framework. So they had to fill in the blanks a little bit. But, and there's economies of scale there as well, of course, because if you're doing lots of separate orders on lots of separate things, you are paying a per unit price. Whereas if you're ordering lots of the same, of course, you can drive costs down that way as well. So, creating that uniformity, recognizing where we would need some external support in doing so. I mean, another obvious example is HR. So you go from a handful of staff members to 30 to 40 staff members. Suddenly you've got HR issues every day. Whether it's someone not turning up, someone needing trainings, recruitment, etc. So Love Recruitment, I'll give Abby and Love Recruitment a shout out. They became, a very, very useful resource for us to have, because again, it's just very difficult to manage that in-house when it's happening.
Well, staffing's a massive one, isn't it? Because at least when you're on site, you can manage those individual staff. As soon as you suddenly got 6, even 2, I know clubs that struggle to manage their managers once they get to 2 or 3. And if that person's not performing how you want, it suddenly puts a massive spanner in the works just to try and make that club perform.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's you have to rely on more. So I think that also lends itself to having a robust performance management tools, whether it's your CRM, dashboard reporting, whatever it may be, because you're absolutely right. You have to be far less reliant on the eye test and more reliant on your reporting methods. But of course, the data sources have to be set up correctly. It has to be accurate. You can't be flying blind, as it were. So it becomes very, very challenging, and you have to learn to accept parameters and allow people space to operate within those parameters as well. Because if you're a bit of a control freak, which I am, it is difficult to let go of some of that control, but it's essential that you do, because if you want to involve yourself in every nook and cranny, you're going to drive yourself mad. You're not going to be able to scale up your business. Learning to trust your people, but also your infrastructure, your tools, your systems, all the rest of it. That's very, very important. But again, it's having that high level oversight. So the key metrics are finding their way to you on a daily basis. As I say, I was keen to talk about it. It's a very interesting challenge, and for us, we were able to keep up the sort of individual approach for 2 or 3 sites, and then beyond that, it just became very difficult. And of course, we introduced a middle level of management as well, regional managers, cluster managers, that sort of thing. And
I guess you have to take that into account, because in the end of the day, as you guys as owners and managers, you can't keep relying on yourselves to be going around to all these clubs. So suddenly there's a level of cost that obviously gets added to the business as you scale higher and higher. So that needs to be taken into account before you start jump into these extra sites.
Yeah. Another company I'll give a shout out to actually is Pro Insight, David Hopkins and team. We engage with them for mystery shopping, for digital footprint audits. And again, just having that tool at our disposal meant that we were getting the insights and feedback that we wanted, but we didn't have to go and, go mystery shop all our clubs ourselves or constantly keep an eye on our digital footprints. The other thing I would say is that having hub software or platforms, forgive me, I'm not very technical, but we used, it sounds like I want some kind of sponsorship thing. I'm not. These are just genuine shout outs for people that helped me over the years, but we used a platform called Soshi, which was a social media hub. So every club's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, it was all in one place. So you could keep an eye on all of the performance metrics there quite easily. And if you wanted to do a post that went across all platforms, across all sites, you're in a position to do that as well. So I do think technological solutions are a big factor in this. And it's again, you want to keep that individual touch. You don't want to make it too uniform, particularly if you're in the franchising world or the independent gym world, because that's part of your magic formula. That's a part of who you are. It's your identity. But you have to find ways of being able to maintain that secret sauce, but also having that framework and that structure. So again, it's about having those channels and those parameters, but allowing your staff to operate within those.
It's interesting because I work with a club at the Pulse out in Bulgaria, and they effectively took, so obviously they've got the amazing clubs, 14 clubs, but they took all the call handling in-house. So they created a call center for it, just because they were able then to manage far easier from head office the actions that were going, pretty similar to how you guys work as Tima. And the idea was you have one central unit for that activity, and then you can control that. So the message that's going out is the same. So you've not got one salesperson at one club saying one thing, one person elsewhere saying another. You pretty much, and they took that as a decision in the same way someone would take a decision to hire you guys to sort of go, well, okay, we've now got 4 or 5 clubs. We can't have different messages, different standards, different styles going out there. We need to maintain that brand coherence. So we're going to bring it all into one office. And it was quite an interesting approach, because obviously usually when you go out for big clubs like they are, I mean, some of them are nearly 100,000 square foot clubs, you'd expect them to have club managers, sales teams, full sales. And they didn't need to, because they brought a lot of the hard grafting work into that head office function, and it just works really well. Obviously, they still need to do the sales tours on site and stuff, and then that comes down to personality. But in terms of that controlled function that they needed, it's all in one place, which in some respects, as you grow, that's the way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, really, because we had been debating a head office pre-COVID for probably 6 months, pros, the cons, the costs, etc. But then post-COVID, when we launched Tima across the 7 sites, we're still with all 7, but one of them is no longer owned by us. But it was done as, I'm sure I've told the story before, so I won't tell the whole story on the show, but we'd never intended it to be what it is today. It was only ever meant to be a temporary COVID recovery thing. But exactly what you've just said, one of the main benefits we noticed is this is so much easier to control our messaging. It's so much easier to control the standard of the data input. It's so much easier to just monitor and control everything, because it's all been done from the central resource, particularly if it's a task that can be, you don't need one person per club per task. If you can get one person doing multiple club, same task, then again, it's just and look, I don't want to sound again a control freak, like I said, but it is important to maintain control of your branding and your messaging, and most importantly, your quality, right? It's because it does have that negative impact, because particularly if you're medium sized. So if you're, I don't know, pure gym and you've got 400 sites, okay, 2 of them aren't great. It's a tiny percent of your estate, whereas if you've got 5 sites, it's 20% of your estate. You can't afford to have a bad apple there. So it's it's interesting you say that. That was definitely one of the benefits of Tima, which we probably should have foreseen. It seems obvious in hindsight, but it genuinely wasn't part of the mandate when we first set it up. We just noticed, this is actually really useful, which is great. And also, of course, it's not just a message you're putting out, but all the feedback's coming into the same place. So you're not relying on lost in translation across 4 or 5 6, 7 club managers, it's all coming into the same place, and it's all logged in the same place. It's all tracked in the same place. It's all interpreted by the same people. So it's just cleaner data, if you like, whether it's objective.
And not just that, you've got people doing that job day in, day out, rather than someone who's, I don't know, they've had to deal with a member complaint, they've done a sale, they've also had to, I don't know, clean up a mess. That's a lot harder to make sure that you're getting the same repeatable structure going out. Whereas if you've got them in one place, it's far easier to do that.
Absolutely. And I think that also speaks to, if you are, single site operator looking to operate multiple sites. I mentioned earlier cluster roles. One of the roles we had is we had a cluster studio manager. So, I can't remember which club it was. I think it was Rushden, but one of the clubs, the club manager was absolutely brilliant at managing the class timetable, really good at recruiting instructors, really good at attracting members to classes. It was their passion, their background, etc. So we just said, okay, cool, you're now doing that for all the sites. And again, having it centralized in that way, it's just more efficient, and efficiency is really important at scale. And also, again, it's that consistency that we had. So we didn't just have, 6 completely different class timetable. Sorry, I keep saying 6 because we sold it. 7 7 different class timetables. One's utilization that's at 20%, one's at 80%. The invoices are a mess here, but they're clean here, etc., etc. By bringing it all into one place, it just allowed that. And again, you can scale it. At a certain point, you need more than one person doing the same thing because everyone only has so many hours in the day. But you'd be surprised how far you can stretch it if you give someone a single task. And again, I'm just repeating what you said, but if you've got people that are having to wear several hats throughout the day, that is inefficient. It takes time to change hats. Whereas if you've got one person who's devoted to one task, there's not enough of it in one club, but when you've got multiple clubs, now there is enough. So yeah, it's so funny. I actually hadn't intended this sort of parallel with Tima, but it's clear, it's there. It's, it is a strength. Of course, the difference is with Tima that, all our clients are owned by different people, so it's not that shared ownership. But the point remains the same, that the concept of having specialists dealing with specialist roles across multiple sites, because there isn't enough of that task in one site, leads to higher quality work, in my opinion.
And strangely, Simon, it probably actually reduces the cost. Because if you're not having to have the same level of salespeople in the club because they're having to do all these different things as well as the sales, you suddenly find actually to deliver 100 calls a week or 200 calls a week is actually cheaper to bring in someone like you than it is actually to hire that person to sit in the club and do that. You're actually better off having them do a different role in the club, but also then deliver personal training and make sure the sales. So you can actually, by splitting those roles and make sure you have experts doing various roles, it actually becomes more cost efficient.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, this is all part of the sort of Tima philosophy. And again, it does tie in nicely to scaling a business. And it's funny, actually, I hadn't really thought about this is something that I can advertise. This is something I can put out there. But it absolutely is, in terms of we can help you scale. Because, it's about division of labor. It's about having specialists in each area of productivity, because they will deliver at a higher level. And it's not just about their skill set, it's about their passions, their motivations. If there's something that they're really into organically, because that's their bag, they're going to do a better job of it.
Well, we all know personal trainers, gym instructors, people like that hate doing sales calls. Absolutely. So even if we just focus on what you guys do, there's a lot of things in that business that those guys hate doing. And I go in, you can imagine for what I do, and I'll go in and train these guys, and you can see on their face, they just look at you blank to go, oh no, call drives, you've got to be joking. And you can just see it's just not going to happen, or it's going to be a slog to get these guys sat at the desk doing the calls together, whether you do it as a team event, whether you do it individually, it's hard graft. Whereas, at least taking a company like yours to bring them in, it's a bit like having someone do their social media. Yeah. So we do social media for clubs, and we don't charge anywhere near the time value to what the clubs would spend on doing that. One, because we've got the tools to bang it out quickly. Secondly, we're used to it. So it's a matter of the speed at which I can produce a post, and a whole 30-day content thing is far quicker than a club having to sit there. So it's having a look and go, actually, for the 300, 500 quid, whatever it is that we pay them, actually look at the hours that we're going to lose or dragging my team away from this element of the business. Is it worth it? We may as well just invest in that. And I think that's where it comes into growing your business. It's sort of going, okay, as an individual club, like you say, we can probably get away with it. The moment you've got two and you want the same message and everything else, then it becomes a lot more difficult. And by the time you got, like you guys had 7, no wonder you were using a social media app and company to support you, because it's almost impossible to try and get that same message across the board, unless you're almost going, right, that's your post for Monday, that's your post for Tuesday, that's your post for Wednesday, these are your ads, this is, you know what I mean, these are your landing pages. This is how we're doing it. So it's absolutely, economy of scales is one of the things. Now, one thing I did want to ask you, as you started, obviously you did that over sort of 6 or 7 years. What were the challenges you were facing as you were going along the lines, and some probably that you wouldn't have expected?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think one of the big challenges was adapting to a new market, because of course you do things a certain way in a certain market, it has an impact, it works really well. So when I think about the 7 clubs back in the day, look, predominantly in the south of England, but still we had clubs with club in Dover, club in Clacton, Twickenham, just different locations, different demographics, and different, I mean, look,
well, Clacton to Twickenham,
yes,
vastly different
yeah,
demographics.
Absolutely. So learn, and again, you can't. It's costly to have to spend 6 months figuring out the demographic, right? But so what we quickly learned was that you can't just assume that these processes, not necessarily processes, but this marketing strategy, this pricing, this membership model, that those sorts of things, that it will necessarily translate into this new market. Now, again, because we were a franchise, we didn't have total autonomy there, but you can flex your price. You can flex your length of term, that sort of thing, and also the culture behind your marketing. So we quickly learned that we had to do all of that due diligence prior to opening a site, and actually it formed part of the viability assessment. So one of my jobs for about 18 months was to just travel up and down the country and visit potential sites and assess them for viability. And again, it was quite a basic approach I would take on the first couple. Are there enough people here? Is the foot flow good enough? Can we actually get a deal from the landlord without getting ripped off, et cetera, but that developed over time. And it included, okay, I'm less concerned about actually securing the site because we've done that a few times now, we're getting quite good at that. I'm more concerned with, okay, we're going to get the site, we need the first year to go gangbuster, let's get all of our ducks in a row, let's understand what the demographic is, let's understand who the competitors are, let's understand what the community is going to react well to. What's the local sporting team that everyone follows? Is it football in this part of the country, rugby in this part of the country, cricket in this part of the country, etc.? These sounds like, and again, maybe some of the people listening to this are thinking that sounds a bit extreme. That's exactly the attitude I took in the first couple of sites. I just wrote it off as not very important, effectively. But actually, one of the biggest learnings was, no, these things really matter. It makes a big difference. Even if it's 10 to 15% extra sales every month, well, that's a huge difference in the first year. Colossal, really. So I think that was one of the challenges. The other challenge was that you have to make yourself less available to all of your stakeholders, as it were, your staff, your members, your PTs, your class instructors, the business owners, the franchisor in our case, etc. Because again, when you're single site, you kind of can pick up the phone to whoever, whenever, because there's just not that much going on, relatively speaking. I mean, no disrespect to single site operators, etc. It's funny, actually. Sorry, this is a side tangent, but I don't know if this is going to make me popular or not. But my wife and I have 3 children, and my brother has 1. And whenever he complains about his child, I'm like, no, you don't know what you're talking about, like all this, and it's so silly. But anyway, so I just realized it's silly.
Oh no, I've got 3, so I know exactly what you mean.
There you go, good man. But yeah, so obviously it does feel like I couldn't possibly be any busier with one site. You absolutely can be, but look, you can't, because you reach a certain point in the day where it's like, I just can't answer the phone, I can't respond to that many emails, I can't. So you have to learn to distance yourselves from certain things and create that sort of layer below you to handle that sort of thing. So it's funny, you were talking about the personal trainers earlier, about how they don't like doing the sales calls. Again, having a dedicated PT manager, PT coach, lead PT, whatever you want to call them, that became an essential in the business, because again, you just need these heads of departments. And again, it depends on your model, obviously. So, my background from Fitness First, working in large clubs, lots of staff, heads, departments, etc., then going into Anytime Fitness, which was a skeletal staffing model with no heads departments. You just had a club manager and some sales consultants and self-employed PTs. But again, once you get to 6, 7, whatever clubs, and you've got this many staff, you do need dedicated roles, because again, you just if your PT needs something, they should be able to get hold of something. They shouldn't have to wait a week for, in this case, me to get back to them because I'm so busy with everything else. You want to maintain that level of service, not only to your members, but also to your staff and your suppliers and all the rest of it. So you do need to make sensible appointments in that regard. But yeah, I'm just trying to think of some of the other challenges. Demographics was definitely a big one. I think knowing where to invest your time, that's another big challenge, because of course, you're having to select which sites do I go to, which suppliers do I prioritize talking about, which projects require the most attention, and actually those become very, very big decisions very, very quickly, because if you focus all your efforts in one area, that's to the detriment of another area. So you have to get that right, and learning how to correctly identify where to spend your time, where to devote your efforts is really important. And also recognizing that you should never be devoting too much time and attention to one specific area to too long a period of time. You kind of have to learn to have eyes in the back of your head. It's
Did you find you tended to have good clubs that were sort of almost left to their own devices because they just delivered, and that allowed you to give the focus on the ones that needed the more attention?
Yeah, I mean, that's generally how it would go. But of course, the problem with that is that if someone does a really good job over a period of time, doesn't get recognized, doesn't get rewarded, doesn't get any attention, the performance will dip. I used to describe it as spinning plates. If a plate's spinning and it's really going, you don't need to spin it, it's going. But of course, if it starts slowing down, it's going to fall off if you don't recognize it's slowing down and go over there and spin it. So you're right. It's definitely the case that you would look. So, I would just look at my dashboard in the morning. I have a bureau with all my clubs in and say, right, okay, these guys are off the mark. I need to make sure I get down there this week. But I would also make sure, look, these guys have just hit target. I need to get down there. I need to bring them a bottle of fizz or whatever it was. So I think there is that temptation to devote all of your efforts in the area of least development. And of course, once you reach a certain size, you have to recognize what you're just putting good money after bad. I know that's a slightly unfortunate phrase, excuse me, but if you do have a problem member of staff and you spend 6 months trying to turn them around and it just isn't going to happen, and you've just neglected your other staff for 6 months, and I'm talking from personal experience here, because I don't like giving up on staff. I really don't. And there was almost an arrogance to my approach that, no, I can turn them around, no, I can save them, all the rest of it. But of course, eventually, after a number of years and a number of learnings, mistakes, whatever you want to call them, you recognize that actually sometimes you have to know when to nail something on the head, hit someone on the head.
The thing is, once you've got multiple sites, you have to rely on those guys on site to deliver what you need to on a daily basis. Because as an owner or a senior manager, you're effectively the strategist. You're not the deliverer of the goods, are you? You're there to go, right, this is the way the business is going, and we spread that out over all of them. What we're not trying to do is go, right, I'm going to firefight all the challenges in all those clubs. So ultimately, recruitment, and obviously you mentioned Abby earlier, but wherever you recruit your staff from, you've got to make sure they're of the quality. And like you say, it's also having that speed to realise actually this person isn't delivering, whether that's in probation or whether it's further down the line, because actually I'm spending far too much time focusing, because you're not even focusing on the club. Let's be honest. If you have a difficult staff and it's not performing, you're devoting your time on that individual, which actually then is not better in the club either, because you're almost battling that person.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think those were the challenges. Understanding demographics early enough, and recognizing the best way to spend your time, and not getting trapped down any particular rabbit hole for too long.
And the benefits, Simon, did you see? Because obviously that's the challenges that you face as you're growing that. But obviously there must have been huge benefits of suddenly having 7 clubs.
Yeah, absolutely.
What does this give us?
Yeah, I mean, look, that to be quite callous about it, one of the main benefits is that if one of your clubs has a bad month, you're not screwed, if that makes sense. You've not got all your eggs in one basket, as it were. But also, I would say that having different sites, different staff, different demographics, different markets, it develops you as an individual, and it teaches you a lot. And it also gives you an opportunity to experience things in a different way. So, I mentioned Clacton, as you say, very, very different to Twickenham, but definitely lots of learnings. And you also learn to recognize what the common threads are. So, as I said, I've talked a lot about the differences, but you do also recognize what a common thread is. And that, I think, is extremely valuable, because that's the scalable part. That's the part that you want to focus on. And that's if you can prove something in 7 different locations, you've kind of proven it. It works, and it gives you that confidence to then replicate it elsewhere. So if you can make something scalable and replicable, sky's the limit, right? So you learn those things as you go. I think other benefits were, again, learning to let go of things, not let go of things, because you never let go of anything, but learning to, I guess, trust is the big one. You learn to trust other people, trust other suppliers, trust your infrastructure. And it's certainly a challenge as well. So again, it's funny, really. I would often say to my staff, look, again, forgive me, this is a bit crass, but I would say to my sales consultants, look, if I could earn my salary doing your job, I would do that all the time. Because your job is you've got this narrow focus. You've just got this track that you can sprint down. All you've got to worry about is running as fast as you can. Whereas in my job, it's, there are 7 different paths in front of me. Which way do I go? Which is the right way? If I go the wrong way, I'm going to have to spend 6 months reversing and then pick the right way. It's, there's a lot of not stagnation, but you have to think so much. You have to use your brain much more than your body, as it were. But of course, I was saying that somewhat facetiously, because it was meant to motivate the staff member and get them to see the benefits of their role. But would I go back into it again? No, of course I wouldn't. It's just one of those things, isn't it? Once you have mastered something, and look, it sounds a bit arrogant, but I consider myself having mastered those particular previous roles, hence elevating as I have. You kind of don't want to go back to the easier task, because you want the challenge. You want the get up and go. But again, it's so that's definitely a benefit. It's fresh challenges, it's fresh thoughts, it's fresh learning. It kind of forces growth and development. It diversifies your portfolio, so you're not as vulnerable. And it exposes you to new things. So I would highly recommend it.
And so have you taken that experience? Because obviously you've now moved full time over into Tima. So you're not running these 7 sites on a weekly basis. Have you taken those skills and gone, okay, that's allowed us then? Because obviously, like you said before, Tima was a natural growth out of all the stuff you were doing with the 7 clubs. So it was great. But how do you think you've developed, or you've able to take Tima from those learnings that you've taken?
Yeah, I mean, so Tima is different in terms of we own it. It's our own independent business. There's no franchise agreement. There's no compliance. There's no brand standards. We have complete free reign on this one, and it's also something that none of us have done before in terms of operating a contact center. It's been a very different experience, I would say. So certainly some of the learnings from going from single site to multi-site were applicable. But it's been a different set of challenges, if I'm honest, because for Tima, it's all about efficiency. That's, and again, forgive me, it's a bit crass, but that's how we grow our profitability. It's all for efficiency. Whereas with the gyms, it was about the more sites you open, the more members you have, the higher the revenue thing. And you can't really, you could argue you could drive the efficiency a little bit, particularly at a certain size of sites. You can get economies of scale, and you're paying, I don't know, £5 less per toilet roll or whatever. There are some efficiencies to be gained, but it's been a very different set of challenges in that regard, because it's scaling and it's efficiency. And
Well, I guess what you are able to do, Simon, is take all those. So you've had the learnings of going, right, we're going to pull all the great things from all these clubs. Now that you're working with, obviously, it's not just anytime clubs you're working with, you work in independents and across the board. So now you're able to take that skill set that you had from running 7 sites and going, okay, those skills, we can now start pulling all the benefits or all the great stuff that all of the other clients are doing and put it into one. And that's potentially one of the reasons, like, give you an idea, your Brixton pre-sale, now that you've able to put that together. If I came with my brand new club, I've only got the one that I'm opening up now, you can take that out and go, right, we're slotting that in there because we know it works.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely one of the most exciting things about Tima for me is just, again, I like being exposed to different scenarios, different markets, working with different people. Again, not just working with Anytime Fitness anymore. We are working in a few other operators, and not even just gyms anymore. You know, there's a couple of other things on our table as well. And again, it's all learning and development. But it's funny, Ryan. It's that combination of, there are some universally applicable principles. And again, having identified those through the growth of the previous business, previous to me, it obviously still exists. You can kind of do that, but you also have to treat it as a fresh project and try and have an open mind. You know, but it's interesting you say it, because it's a position I take very seriously. I mean, look, you know, we've done 6 pre-sales in the last 4 months. I don't know anyone else that's done that. Well, look, of course, there are suppliers out there that do that, but not in the way that we have. We're really not in the thick of it. You know, we're in the heart and soul of the pre-sale. That's a really unique position for us to be in. And again, it's almost like, so I'm a big data head. I like harvesting data. I like interpreting it. I like applying it to the next project. But the amount of data I get through now is just, it's unbelievable. You know, it's far too much to harness in one go. So again, you have to learn to be selective. You have to learn to recognize patterns quicker, and therefore the anomalies, which are the interesting part. But it's been scaling team has been very, very different. Because again, it's a different business. You know, we're not looking.
I guess you guys are scaling as you're getting clients now, rather than necessarily creating a new club. You're always bringing clients on board and going, actually, now we need to increase that resource in the site. So we can't increase that resource until we've got the clients on board. So I can imagine it's a slightly different process. Yeah,
I mean, that's absolutely spot on. It's sorry, I love having these chats with you, Ryan, because you help me articulate some of this stuff and gather my thoughts. It's because obviously in the gyms, you build a gym and it's a fixed cost model. You know, you spend X amount on the club, you buy the kit, you hire the staff, etc. You're running at a loss, you get to a certain number of members, you break even, you get a number of members, you're profitable, every member's more profit. Whereas for us, it's not true. You know, the more clients we have, the more staff we need. So as our revenues go up, our costs go up again, which is why I was talking about efficiency earlier. That's how we grow our margins, that's how we grow our profitability. But you're right, it's a very different set of challenges, because of course I don't want I don't want clients I can't service, because that's a disaster reputationally, and staff and client retention, of course. But equally, I don't want staff sat twiddling their thumbs, because that's just burning cash effectively. So having to as closely marry the resource, the demand, the supply as possible, that's difficult. And one of the big things that's come out of the last few months is we've become much better at understanding what an individual agent is capable of, what the expectations should be. And equally, as we're working with new clients in new markets, in new sectors, we're understanding better and better and better what that workload entails. And again, there's that common thread of, 90% of the stuff we do is phone calls. We do some emails and some social media and a few other bits and pieces, but 90% of it is phone calls. So you could argue it's picking up the phone and speaking to someone, but of course it's not. There's different scripts, there's different call parameters, there's different objectives. And actually this is an interesting one about scaling. So at Performex last week, I was chatting to Hannah from Atmosphere, and she's got a product that can be applied anywhere. They do it's like a plug.
TV.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but she was saying that, look, in theory we can do pubs, we can do hairdressers, we can do gyms, we can do bowling alleys, we can do whatever. But actually, if we try and spread ourselves too thin and we just become jack of all trades, master of none, then that dilutes our product. It dilutes our infrastructure. It becomes all things to everyone, which is nothing to no one. So one of the learnings I've taken is that whilst I am keen to dabble in other markets, again, diversify the portfolio, reduce vulnerability, I think picking a couple of things to specialize in and focus on, that's been a learning as well. And I think that is important. I appreciate that's less applicable to in the gym setting, but in a business setting in general, I think that is important. And actually, I was speaking to the other two directors the other day about, I'm a big fan of autobiographies, particularly those of sort of successful CEOs and things. And technically it's not an autobiography because Steve Jobs didn't write it, but there's a biography on Steve Jobs, and it talks about when he made his triumphant return to the Apple boardroom, having been unceremoniously sacked a few years previously, but they got him crawling back because the stock skydived, nosedived, and blah blah blah. But he came in and said, one of the biggest mistakes you guys are making right now is you've got far too many products on the market. We're going to get rid of all but two. We're going to do, was it iPods and laptops, whatever it was. It depends on what.
It was definitely the iPod, wasn't it? The iPod was that big music thing because it took everything from a CD to whatever, and you could choose your music. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I forget specifically which ones, but he basically said, right, two products. You can possibly have alternate, so you can have the iPod Nano or whatever, but two products, and we become the best in the world at those two products. That's the business model, and that resonates with me as well, because I think, particularly, and again with Tima, it's kind of similar to Atmosphere in terms of, in theory, everyone needs communication. So it doesn't matter what sector you're in or what industry you're in or whichever. But I think for us, knowing what our strengths are, knowing where our passions lie, that's an important focus.
It's also important for the message that comes over. So to give you an example, I because of the pandemic, I had to diversify, and I did Vitality for a while.
Okay.
And obviously, because I'm a consultant, that's my main business, and that's what I do. But what happens is when you've got two very distinct things, and it only takes you guys to go into supermarkets, for instance, and suddenly then people start going, "What do you do?
Yeah,
who are you?" And I think for a couple of years, obviously, I was trying to promote both these businesses, and you lose. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still did really well, but you sort of lose that element of what are you? So obviously last year I dropped the Vitality stuff and pushed it all back so that you've got this funnel now. And although I've got various different things within that health and fitness consultancy model, it's still health and fitness consultancy model. Whereas that Vitality thing sat outside and almost confused the message. And I'm never one for... and I understand your point on Steve Jobs, but I'm never one to say to a club, niche down, because you hear it all the time, niche, and sometimes they can go too far. And it's sort of going, well, the population isn't niche. If you only need 100 members, that's great. But like any time could never niche in that they've got a model, absolutely, but they don't go, we're going for over 50s or we're going for the 20 to 30 one, because you can't. It's you need too many members to niche down on that. But know who your customers are. But so what they're not trying to do is go, right, we're a gym and we're a cafe and we're a outdoor boot camp so they're not doing that. So they're niching down to the gym. And then they're making that their niche. And that's still a fairly open market. And that's pretty much what you guys are doing in a sense. You're niching down to health and fitness, but you're not saying we're going just franchise or just independent or just commercial, and that's the great thing. So you've not niched down to the point of almost making it too finite. So you're giving yourself that room to grow into other areas, but you're still niching down and going, this is what our core product is. Whoever takes up in the industry, we're still that core product, and we deliver that same idea to everybody, but we can do multiple styles of business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just one question I was thinking while you were talking on there, and it's just gone blank a minute. In terms of the business, in terms of where you guys are going and who you're looking for, what's the because obviously I've been quite not close to it, but obviously we speak regularly, and then I've seen this growth over the last 6 months, which has been mental, and congratulations to you guys.
Thank you.
So where are you looking for now in terms of that growth? Who are you looking for in terms of clients?
Yeah, I think again we've kind of all agreed that we want to focus on gyms. Exactly as you said, though, we want to look at franchises, we want to look at independent operators, we want to look at public sector gyms, but very much gyms, because I think, again, look, don't get me wrong, if someone else turns up, we're going to explore it. But I think in terms of, because it's interesting, we've recently invested in some marketing, very, very
Your
small
website
scale.
looks
But
nice. It does look
thank
nice.
you.
I've seen
Thank
your ads.
Oh, have you? Oh, brilliant. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
Someone's seen them. That's good. Yeah, that's very, very new. That's launched this week. And again, we were sat down with the marketeer and she said, what's your core message? What are your core products, etc. And we were like, well, we kind of want to be everything to everyone, but it just doesn't work. So yeah, I think gyms, I think, look, again, sales, service, and member issue. Those are our free branches, as it were. So we can help drive sales, we can help engage with your members, and we can deal with arrears calls, member cancellations, people canceling their direct debits, that sort of thing. That's our core product. That's something that we've proven we're very good at, and I think there is a demand for that across the UK. I mean, we did a little bit of, because again, we sit down, we talk about these things, and our estimate is there is about 7,000 gyms. People listening to this will know that that's not quite accurate, forgive my ignorance, but I think it's about 7,000, and that's quite a big market. We're working with about 40 at the moment.
I know, it's crazy. So, when I look at it and you sort of go, I guess the things you just have to consider is obviously there's big groups out there that take up quite a lot of it, but it's a substantial amount of gyms. And do you know what? There's so many that don't get it. I mean, so many do get it right, but there's so many that don't. And I was talking to Dr. Paul Bedford last week.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, he's amazing insight into things like retention and stuff like that. And he was saying the communications in clubs and how easy it is to extend someone's lifetime value just by talking to them. Recognizing them in the gym, having that solid communication tools. So calls like yours from retention calls, not just a sales call, but it makes a massive difference. And it also makes a difference from the very start. Now, I'm a big believer that retention starts at the moment of the sale.
Completely agree.
Absolutely, that's where the journey starts. So if you're rubbish there, you set that person up for this. I'm going to join a gym, but I'm not really sure what I'm getting. But if your communication is brilliant from the outset, and they've got someone like you guys, it's that first point of call. Because let's be honest, any client that I bring on works with you, you are that first telephone call. Yep. It's not the club, it's not the club manager, it's you guys. And so if that's professional and it comes across in the right way, the expectation that when they walk into that gym for their tour is really high. So you guys can have a massive impact on someone's business. And that's when it comes down. As we all know, it takes 15 seconds to make a first impression of everything else, and that can happen on the telephone. So you get that right, and it makes the club's job so much easier.
Absolutely. It's I definitely think that we want to support the gyms. That's our big focus moving forward. And if I'm being, look, again, we want to be open-minded to new opportunity. And again, the sales side of things has developed a lot over the last few months. We've learned a lot during the pre-sales. I've made some hiring specifically for a sales service, part of the onboarding, the training, etc. But I think our core product will always lie in engagement and retention, because I think most of the CRM we work on is actually based on Paul's work and his research. I'm pretty sure it is. And again, there's just this really powerful correlation between if you actually make the calls and follow the CRM, your utilization goes up, your visits per member goes up, your PT uptake goes up, your class uptake goes up, your average length of stay goes up, your attrition goes down, your lifetime value goes up. And it's a really powerful correlation. And that's how we built Tima. That's how we were able to secure preferred supplier status with Anytime Fitness. It's just, the data spoke for itself, really.
It's really interesting because if you look at the stats in terms, because I love this one, the longer someone stays, the more they pay as a yield. So it's not, they don't join on £30 a month and then 18 months later, they're still paying £30 a month. Their spend goes up. So the longer they're there, they trust you more. They're more likely to buy PT, more likely to buy retail, drinks, all that sort of that increases at the longer someone stays. So if you've got a really robust onboarding process and member client journey, whether that's including you guys as a call, whether it's the emails or automations, interactions on the gym floor, the more you keep that person there, the more money they will spend every month.
Yeah.
And I love that stat, because you're sort of going, you don't just sign someone up and go, oh, the lifetime value is X membership times the length of stay. Well, it's not. That's not how it works. Yes, you've got that as your baseline, but actually the level tilts the longer they're there, and that person could be spending £90 a month, £100 a month, rather than the 30, simply because of the length of stay they've been there, and the more they trust you and the more they value your business.
Absolutely. Well, so when I'm making a sort of data / evidence-based sales pitch, if you like, to a potential client, I'll look at exactly what you just said in terms of the average length of stay and the spend per month going up toward the back end, and therefore the lifetime value goes up. But also, if you look at the cost of acquisition in terms of getting a new member versus the cost of retention, i.e. us, it's significantly less. You've also got to look at member referrals. You've got to look at feedback online. It's interesting what you said about the retention starts at the first point. We have found that members are significantly more likely to give you a positive Google review in the first month than they are at any other point in their membership journey. Yeah, absolutely. So if you correlate I guess cross-reference rather than correlate. If you look at the Google reviews you've received, look up the member, and again, anyone listening to this can do this. Go to your Google reviews, look at the member who left them, and look at when they joined. I guarantee you that, well, I can't guarantee it, but certainly the ones that I've looked at, the majority of those reviews come in the first 4 weeks of membership, and it tends to be about the first impression, the first experience. That's positive and negative, by the way. So, again, it's a very, very potent thing. And of course, one of the things that we do with our clients is that we call all members within a week of them signing up, and two things. Firstly, we've reinforced any messages. So, if you've got your key fob or your membership card or whichever it might be, have you booked your first class PT session, whatever it is. But also we found that people, for whatever reason, are more prepared to be honest with us than they are the person they joined with, because they don't want to upset or offend the person they joined with. So they actually say things to us that they would never have said in club. So I actually don't know how to use the app. That's a really common one. So yeah, I think it's again, look,
it's the same as referrals though, isn't it? You talk about reviews. If you're likely to get a referral, it's most likely to be in that first 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So when I work with clubs, it's always, if you give them a referral pass out, it has a 2 or 4 week expiry. That's it. One, it gives you the ability to follow it up. Secondly, it has an expiry, so there's scarcity and they do run out. But just mentally, someone is more likely to. We used to use to think, God, this is years ago when I was with Homes Place and we were allowed to take name and numbers. Gone are those days, thanks to GDPR. But it used to be, these are like gold dust. Everybody wants them. And you almost went, oh, I'm not really sure. You go, well, if you don't want them, we can give them someone else, because everybody's looking for these passes. And just by taking them away, people would give you names and numbers. It was quite funny. But absolutely, that first 2 to 4 weeks, when someone's super excited, they're just starting on their new journey, that's when they're more likely to refer. And that's the great thing about things like your calls, because if they bring you guys on board to do that member journey, they know a call is going out at week 1. It is going out at week 2, whatever the parameters you guys set. That call is going to happen. So referral is going to be mentioned, review is going to be mentioned, booking the PT, all that stuff that you want them to uptake in that first 6 to 12 weeks of membership is taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's, I say to my clients all the time, look, if you're selling a membership, it's, I don't know, Good Friday, it's 3:00 in the afternoon and you've got all the time in the world, then you probably are going to do an incredible onboarding job. But if it's Monday evening, you've got to sell 3 memberships in half an hour, you're going to do a whistle-stop tour of the club, you're going to whiz them through the contracts, you're going to send them on their way because you have to, So the Tima service is really there to help. I always say to people that, look, you shouldn't be overly reliant on us, because that just speaks ill of your staff and your current resource. The idea is that we are an enhancement and a secondary layer of not protection, but just almost like a safety net, I suppose. Because look, if it is that person who came in on Friday afternoon and got a really good onboarding, when we call them, this member's going to rave about their experience, and we will encourage that Google review, we will encourage that referral, and we will also give that feedback to the club owner, which reflects really well on the club staff. So yeah, I would definitely say that, don't get me wrong, Ryan, my background is sales. I'm actually, we've had a bit of an infrastructural shuffle at Tima, and I'm going to be doing a lot more sort of sales activity over the next few months for Tima, because it's kind of how I'm wired. But I think in my soul, if you like, member engagement, member retention, and just seeing members happy and achieving their results. That's what it's all about, really, isn't it? It's about members achieving their results. That's why we're all here. That's why we all do what we do. And that result might be losing weight, or it might be gaining some self-esteem, or it might be getting over a breakup, or whatever it is. We want to be instrumental in ensuring that happens. So if A, we can help ensure the club are upholding their standards, but B, we can make sure we're reinforcing those messages and driving members into those engagement and retention tools, then that's what I'll be proud to tell my children about. The sales thing is something I enjoy and will do, but it's not necessarily what I want in my obituary. I want it to be, this guy helps the world.
Don't worry, Simon. I'll read it out at your funeral.
Oh, cheers, mate.
This man was awesome at sales. Now, the one thing I do want to pitch is obviously we work together on a number of projects, and probably the one thing that I find so useful with what you guys do is, so we do all the social media, we do the social media ads and so on. Now, one of the big challenges clubs have is that speed of action to that new inquiry, and I think that is where you guys are invaluable. So all the great stuff you do on the retention, everything else, from a pure marketing and consultant expert, the one big thing I find is leads come in 2 days later, they still haven't had a call.
Yeah,
and we all know once you get within an hour of that initial inquiry, especially social media inquiries, not so much others, but social media inquiries specifically, if you're doing ads and you don't reply to that inquiry within an hour, 70% of those you will never get in touch with or will never book. They probably won't even remember filling the form in. Okay. Yeah. I've had that. What form was that? And you get that a lot. And I guess that is the real invaluable of you guys. Now, I know your SLA isn't to say we will get there in 10 minutes because that's almost impossible with the clients. But the fact that you guys are able to react to that quickly and to get that call in and effectively try and book those people in is massive value to the clubs. Because if you're spending £1,000 on ads, you're leaving it for a day, so 70% of those are lost. Do you know what I mean? Out of the 100 leads you get, you've only actually gained 30. It doesn't matter how many you generate and how many names and numbers you got. If you can't book them to get into the club, it's a complete waste of money. And if some leads are upwards of 6, 7, I've even seen £17 a lead on some campaigns. And you think, well, if someone's spending that much money to get a name, number, email address, and then we don't contact them, it's scary. How much money you could burn really quickly. And that's why your guys' service, for me as a consultant, to bring you guys aboard, that's one of the big things I buy. Yes, it's your professionalism. Yes, it's your ability to close on the thing, but it's also that speed of action that you guys are able to deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, that's by virtue of the fact that we don't have to operate a club. Especially in the independent gym market, there are a lot of owner operators, very small staffing models, because you have to. And I'm not knocking the model at all. I'm just saying that one of the drawbacks of having a model like that, and again, our first Anytime Fitness, we had 2 members of staff. That's what we could afford. So if you're busy engaging with members and looking after the gym, it's very easy to miss these things. Whereas in Tima offices, I have a guy that checks, fit leads every half an hour. As soon as they see a new lead, they call it. And I think the other thing I would, if I'm going to do a bit of self-promotion here, the other thing I would say is that, and again, particularly in the pre-sales, there's 100% of your prospect base that a text and an email does the job. They're super keen. You don't need to invest money on calling them. They're going to sign themselves up effectively, and that's great. Okay, but it's not even 20% in my experience, so it's quite a small percentage. There are also the percent of people that just, Superman can make the call, you're not getting the sale. They're just awkward buggers, they're out there. But there's this middle ground that actually a call, again, look, I've built a business on this. That call does make a difference. And I think that there's a couple of reasons for that. And one of them is that we are in the sort of human being business, as it were, and human beings like working with human beings. So look, you can automate a response that says, what is your fitness goal? If it's weight loss, how much do you want to lose, etc. But it's very cold and clinical. There's no empathy there. There's no emotional.
And people know it as well now. I think people are very used to receiving automated messages, and you can tell which ones aren't and which ones aren't.
100%. And again, right? There are 100% people it's applicable to. I know people that don't want to be called. They much prefer a text or an email. They're very introverted, etc. And that's absolutely fine. But with Tima, you can cover the automations through FitLeads or whoever the provider might be. But you can also cover the sort of harder to reach people, as it were. And also, I do think that it's a service standard that sets you apart, increasingly so. It's like the banks. Look, I'm well aware that every bank on every high street will be closed within the next 10 or 15 years, but maybe quicker than that. But Nationwide are doing a big advertising campaign at the moment, bragging about the fact that they do have branches open.
Yeah.
And look, that may be reflective of their demographic. I appreciate it's probably the older market that work with Nationwide, but even so, I'm kind of like that with Tima in terms of, look, no, we want to give you the best service possible, and the best service possible is a call, not a chatbot, not an automation.
But also, if you flip it as well, Simon, in pre-sale, and one of the big things, obviously, I've done pre-sales for Anytime, Fitness Space, and a few others. And in terms of franchise, the biggest cost in a pre-sale is your staff.
Right.
So yes, you need to have some stuff on board, but a lot of that stuff is brought on board to then follow up on the huge number of inquiries you're getting in. Because if you think about it, a lot of the marketing is done by a marketing team. So they'll get a social media company like ours or somewhere else. They'll bring those in to do that. So the leads are generated, and you don't actually need to have, unless you're going to go out and do huge amounts of outreach, which is not always applicable. If you don't have a big town centre or anything else, outreach is irrelevant. It doesn't work. So you can actually reduce costs significantly in your pre-sale by having someone like Tima on board, because you're not having to bring those staff. You might have a porter cabin that they sit in, but let's be honest, until a month before you open, no one's invited down to the pre-sale. It's literally a station for the staff to sit in while they're doing their calls. And so if you can almost have your manager, one other, not having to bring your whole team on board for that pre-sale, it can save you. Well, what's the average cost of a member of staff these days? $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
So you have to bring 3 or 4 of those on. Potentially, you're looking at $6,000 to $8,000 per month that you can save in your pre-sale by bringing Tima on board to, and that, when you look at it, go, that's just bonkers. That just the economies of scale, and it's huge.
The other thing I would add to that is that I used to say to people all the time, until you've done a pre-sale, you haven't done a pre-sale. And what I meant by that was that it's a completely different animal, as you well know. And actually, look, you can recruit people who have done pre-sales before. Of course you can, but Tima, it's been a month since our last pre-sale. We're in that mode. We have that wiring in us, so we don't need 2 or 3 weeks to learn the ropes. We're good to go from day one. And it just, there's multiple reasons why again, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here. If you look at the Tima pre-sales over the last 6 months versus the non-Tima pre-sales in the 6 months before, the average is much higher in the Tima pre-sales. Now, again, there's multiple factors that go into the success of any club, and I'm not claiming that we're this silver bullet, white and knight shining armor, whatever. But we absolutely are we drive it up. We are a positive influence. We are a factor. And I think that one of those things is, again, we're not wet behind the ears when it comes to pre-sale. We know what the magic words are. We know the urgency. We know the intensity. We are able to deal with vast amounts of prospects in a way that others aren't, and some of that's our technology, obviously. But it's funny. I did just to kind of bring the conversation full circle. Obviously, we started on Brixton. I didn't know if we could make that big a difference. And it's because, again, just full disclosure, Ryan, we have to charge a fair amount. So not the numbers you were just talking about. You're absolutely right. It is significantly cheaper than hiring a team of people. And I would argue that, again, we can kind of replace that with a fraction of that cost. Not a fraction. Well, yeah, I'm not going to go into it, but it's certainly cheaper. But for us, it's the most work we will do for a single club in a single month, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. But if it works and you get the members, you're saving money and you're driving, and Brixton's opened in profit.
Yeah, absolutely. So
that's unlike most clubs don't open in a profit. There's very few generally. There's usually 3 to 6 months when they hit profit, and so the value of opening up in profit can't be underestimated.
Exactly. So I guess my point was that, again, I have to charge more than I normally would during a pre-sale, which was made me a little bit not anxious, but just like, okay, this is a bigger target on my back. I really need to deliver here. but we did, and we have. So yeah, it's been great.
Good bit of pressure for you, Simon. Now we've been on for a lot longer than we normally are, Simon. So I am going to let you go because I know you've got other challenges to deal with today. Bless you on Easter Friday. So I really appreciate you coming on. Now, if anybody wants to get in touch with Simon, and if you own an independent gym and you're struggling with sales, struggling with getting the conversions, one, obviously speak to me, but secondly, speak to Simon and about how you guys can support their business. It does make a difference, and you know what I mean. Converting those leads is vital to any business. So all your details will be at the end, as always. You are one of the sponsors of the podcast anyway, so people should know who you are. But really appreciate your time, Simon. I do love our chats because they're always informative. So appreciate your time, and I'm sure we will have you back on again soon.
Perfect. Cheers, Ryan. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Cheers, dude. Bye for now.